as an emerging institution of excellence. The Center for Human Rights, our specialized research center established in 2020 by Mar Gregorius College of Law, is aimed at promoting human rights research by specifically focusing on the issues faced by the state of Kerala. The center brings together researchers, academicians, practitioners, and other interested stakeholders by regularly organizing seminars, workshops, conferences, and training programs to make a significant contribution in promoting human rights. It's now time to invite our Vice Principal, Dr. Thomas Kutty PG, to welcome us all.
May the name of God Almighty be glorified always. Namaste and welcome. Respected Honorable Justice Anthony Dominic, Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Balraj Chauhan, Reverend Dr. Koshi Isaac Punamotil, Director, Mar Gregorius College of Law, Dr. P.C. John, Principal, Dr. V.S. Jijimon, Convener of this national webinar, Dr. U. Deepti, Organizing Secretary, distinguished scholars from different parts of the country, academicians, faculty members, research scholars, and my dear students. Mar Gregorius College of Law is envisaged and established to be a center of excellence in legal studies and a prominent research center in juridical science. Since its inception in the pursuit of academic excellence, in addition to curricular activities, the college organizes various development programs such as public law lectures, seminars, and conferences in which dignitaries of national and international eminence take part. The college backed the prestigious Sylph Millat Institutional Excellence Award in 2017, instituted by the Society of Indian Law Firms and Menon Institute of Legal Advocacy Training to honor the best law teaching institution in the country. The college, in association with the Menon Institute of Legal Advocacy Training, conceived and organized the first national law reform competition in 2017 with the aim of evolving a draft uniform civil code in consonance with the efforts of the Law Commission of India. This webinar is another initiative of the college in tune with its perceived motto, befitting to the call of the time. The college decided to organize a national seminar on human rights, protection and violations during COVID-19 pandemic. We received an overwhelming response from students, research scholars, and faculty members for this one-day national webinar. The selected 40 research papers will be presented in parallel sessions scheduled in the afternoon. The best paper from the student category and faculty category will get Best Paper Award. Apart from spot registration, 65 researchers and postgraduate scholars registered for the webinar. This inaugural session will be followed by theme presentation session in which 4 eminent academicians will address the participants. As entrusted by the director and principal, may I discharge my pleasant duty to welcome the distinguished guests and speakers and all those who have assembled in this virtual platform for this national webinar. Our chief guest for the day is Honorable Justice Anthony Dominic. He is the chairperson, Kerala State Human Rights Commission. Honorable Justice started his practice in Municipal Court and Judicial First Class Magistrate Court, Kanjirappalli in 1981. He shifted to Kerala High Court at Ernakulam in 1986. He acquired extensive experience in company law, labor law, and constitutional law. He was appointed as additional judge of the Kerala High Court in January 2007 and promoted to be a permanent judge in December 2008. He served as the Chief Justice Kerala High Court from 6th February 2018 to 29th May 2018. Honorable Justice Anthony Dominic Sir, on behalf of the manager and patron, His Beatitude Moranmar Basilius Cardinal Klimis Catholicos, and the entire MGCL family, I extend a very warm welcome to you to this academic banquet. We are blessed with the presence of Professor Balraj Chauhan, a rare combination of an excellent academician and a dynamic administrator. He is the Vice Chancellor, Dharmashastra National University, Jabalpur. Before joining Dharmashastra National Law University, Professor Chauhan has served as Director, Amity Law School, Lucknow, Vice Chancellor of Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia National Law University, Lucknow, and Vice Chancellor, National Law Institute University, Bhopal. Among other very many coveted positions occupied by Professor Chauhan include member of UP State Law Commission, member of UP State Legal Service Authority, and executive member, Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, New Delhi. Professor Chauhan is a distinguished scholar and was awarded Dr. Kumarappa Reckless Award in 2009 for his contribution to the field of criminology. He is a recipient of Commonwealth Foundation Fellowship 2011 and Fellowship of Indian Society of Criminology. He is a visiting faculty to several national law universities, judicial training research institutes, and several international universities. He is a prolific writer and has authored several books and contributed several research articles in national and international journals. He has more than 40 years of teaching and research experience. Dear Professor Chauhan, on behalf of the entire MGCL family, I extend a very cordial welcome to you to this webinar. I extend a very warm welcome to all participants of the webinar. I acknowledge the presence of our director, Reverend Dr. Koshi Isaac Punamotil, Principal Dr. P.C. John, and my co-vice principal, Professor Ramchandran Nair. I acknowledge with gratitude the yeoman service rendered by the organizing committee, headed by Dr. Jijimon, Dr. Deepthi, Professor Vinulal, and student coordinators Arya Kannan, Narayan Sharma, Balram Siraj, Shilpa Sajivan, and Sri Kuti. I also extend a warm welcome to all faculty members and auxiliary staff of MGCL. Once again, a cordial welcome to one and all. Have a nice day. Keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I take it as my privilege to invite our guest of honor, Professor Balraj Chauhan, Vice Chancellor, Dharmashastra National Law University, Jabalpur, to address us all. Sir, you're on mute. Sir, please, can you unmute yourself?
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shilpa, Master of Ceremony of this webinar.
You're welcome, sir.
Good morning to everybody. Honorable Mr. Justice Anthony Dominic, Professor Dr. Thomas Kutti, Director, Principal, esteemed faculty members, learned participants, and dear students. For me, it's a pleasure and privilege too to be with you today, and especially on the topic on which you people are going to discuss human rights protection and violations during COVID-19. We are also having a human rights center at Dharmashastra National Law University, and we are also working to help. I will not call legal aid to provide legal aid to the COVID-19 victims, but I will say that the relief who are in distress, and that I will tell you. So for me, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I would like to congratulate the organizers for organizing this webinar. Friends, human rights are those minimal rights which every individual must have against the state or other public authority by virtue of his being a member of human family, irrespective of any other consideration. George W. Decono has rightly observed that human rights are more than legal concepts. They are the essence of man. They are what make a man humane. Deny them and you deny man's humanity. Human development and social inclusion is directly connected with the recognition and the protection of human rights by the state. I would like to start my discussion with the words of the Amrit Sen, who has very aptly remarked, I quote, "There is something deeply attracted in the idea that every person anywhere in the world, irrespective of citizenship or territorial legislation, has some basic rights which others should respect." Unquote. I think these rights seem to state the moral case for creating and maintaining legal institutions and social practices that protect and promote human rights. In this backdrop, from the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, almost 1.5 years ago, it was clear that our world faced far more than a public health emergency. The biggest international crisis in the generations quickly morphed into an economic and social crisis. 1 year on, another stark fact is tragically evident. Our world is facing a pandemic of human rights abuses. COVID-19 has deepened pre-existing divides, vulnerabilities, and inequalities, and opened up new fractures, including fault lines in human rights. The pandemic has revealed the interconnectedness of our human family and of the full spectrum of human rights, whether civil, cultural, economic, political, and social. When any one of these rights is under attack, others are at risk. The virus has thrived because poverty, discrimination, the destruction of our natural environment, and other human rights failures have created enormous fragilities in our society. The lives of hundreds of millions of families have been turned upside down with lost jobs, crushing debts, and steep falls in income. Frontline workers, people with disabilities, older people, women, girls, and minorities have been especially hard hit. In a matter of months, progress on gender equality has been set back decades. Most essential frontline workers are women, and in many countries are often from racially and ethnically marginalized groups. Most of the increased burden of care in the home is taken on by women. Violence against women and the girls in all forms have rocketed, from online abuse to domestic violence, trafficking, sexual exploitation, and child marriage. Human Rights Watch documented in a recent report on how at least 83 governments and their security forces used the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse to crack down on free speech and peaceful protest. Forming part of what the United Nations Secretary General calls a pandemic of human rights abuse, the free speech clampdown includes physically assaulting journalists, bloggers, and protesters, arbitrary arrests, detentions, and prosecutions of critics of the government responses to the coronavirus, including medicos risking their lives on the front line, broad censorship through new laws and threats, and arbitrarily banning or breaking up protest against the government response. Uh, in the past few days, several protesters criticizing PM Modi's vaccination strategy has surfaced across the national capital. The posters read, I quote, मोदी जी हमारे बच्चों की वैक्सीन विदेश क्यों भेज दिया? Why Modi ji you have sent the vaccine meant for our children to the foreign countries? In response, the Delhi police registered 25 cases in the matter under section 188 of the IPC, read with the section of the Prevention of Defacement of Property Act, Prevention of Damage to the Public Property Act, and Press and Regulation of Books Act. The police had arrested 25 people in connection with the case, most of whom are auto rickshaw drivers, shop owners, daily wage laborers, and unemployed people. In the similar fashion, the government of Uttar Pradesh has started taking strict actions against the people who criticize the COVID management schemes of the government and people who requested for oxygen or beds through social media platforms were dealt with hard hands. Other state governments such as Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh have also issued orders to ensure that any matter related to medical infrastructure should not be posted on social media platforms. Eventually, here, ray of hope emerged. Eventually, the Supreme Court had to intervene and order that no action should be taken against people seeking help on social media platforms. In order to understand the issues related to human rights in the times of pandemic, we have to discuss them under some heads. And first head I thought will be relevant, that is medical infrastructure. According to Article 25(1) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I quote, everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Unquote. The generally satisfactory meaning of health is that given by the WHO in the introduction of the Constitution, as indicated by the WHO, quote, health is a condition of complete physical, mental, and social prosperity, and not only the non-appearance of disease, unquote. As of late, this announcement has been intensified to incorporate the capacity to lead a socially and economically productive life. Given no explicit reason of the right to health or health care under the Constitution, the Supreme Court of India in Bandhua Mukti Morcha versus Union of India and others interpreted the right to health under Article 21, which guarantees the right to life. In the state of Punjab and others versus Mohinder Singh Chawla, the apex court reaffirmed that the right to health is a fundamental to the right to life and should be put on record that the government had a constitutional obligation to provide health services. In the state of Punjab and others versus Ram Lubhaya Bagga, the court went on to endorse the state's responsibility to maintain health services. In September 2019, a high-level group on the health sector constituted under the 15th Finance Commission had recommended that the right to health be declared a fundamental right. It also put forward a recommendation to shift the subject of health from the state list to concurrent list. The recommendation to declare the right to health a fundamental right, if implemented, will strengthen pupils' access. However, the later recommendation to shift health to the concurrent list will lead to a constitutional conundrum on whether the centralization of the public health will be helpful in the context of Indian cooperative federalism. At present, the subject of public health and sanitation, hospitals and dispensaries falls under the state list of the 7th schedule of the Constitution of India, which means that state governments enjoy constitutional directives to adopt, enact and enforce public health regulation. In order to understand the current crisis of the health facilities for the citizens of India, especially the marginalized people, we need to analyze the epitomized sectors of health infrastructure. And I think I need not to elaborate. We are reading, seeing in news regarding the availability of bed and oxygen. We are also seeing that uh, people are crying for the admission, they are crying for the oxygen. And especially when I was working on this particular topic, then I thought that this webinar has been organized by a very prestigious school of Kerala. And the way I think Principal Saab mentioned about the achievement of the Margaret College of Law, I think it will be appropriate to inform or tell you what we are thinking about the Kerala when we are sitting in different states. And I'm very happy that my research team of the Human Rights Centers, the information they provided, I tried to compile that. And I found that during the second wave of COVID-19, while the rest of states in India were struggling to provide basic health facilities to the patient and adequate means of livelihood, Kerala has emerged as an example for all others. The state government's prompt response to COVID-19 can be attributed to its experience and investment made in emergency preparedness and outbreak response in the past during Kerala floods in 2018 and especially the Nipah outbreak in 2019. The state used innovative approaches and its experience in disaster management planning came in handy to quickly deploy resources and put up a timely and comprehensive response in collaboration with key stakeholders. Active surveillance, setting up of district control room for monitoring, capacity building of frontline health workers, risk communication, and strong community engagement and addressing the psychological needs. It's very important. Addressing the psychological needs of the vulnerable population are some of the key strategic intervention implemented by the state government that kept the disease in control. And I would like to congratulate, really the state government. However, challenges are there. And talking in terms of the human rights issues in Kerala, the State Human Rights Commission and the High Court has played a pivotal role in not only protecting the human rights of the most vulnerable, but also in preparing a future plan to ensure that no person within the state suffers any atrocity through the hands of law enforcement agencies. The role of State Human Rights Commission and the High Court of Kerala can be understood by certain examples because when I was trying to find out regarding the availability of bed, so the shortage of the beds forced the doctors organization to demand reservation of the COVID beds for themselves. The state government has devised a plan for ensuring the transparency by reporting of real-time availability of the beds in hospitals. And taking cognizance of the matter, the Kerala High Court passed an order directing the health agencies to fix the rate of fees to be charged from the COVID patient. It was a very good direction, and it proved to be very beneficial for the pupil. But the most important, intervention I found that came by a suo motu action of our State Human Rights Commission of Kerala. Honorable Justice Anthony Dominic took a suo motu case based on media reports, and it was regarding the cremation of dead bodies with dignity. Based on media reports in this regard, and directed the district collector to inquire into the matter and file a report. With increasing deaths, including those due to COVID-19, the existing facilities at crematoriums were inadequate. There were demands for setting up temporary arrangements for the cremation. The rights panel pointed out that there are complaints of long delays for cremation and such type of complaints, but Human Rights Commission took a suo motu action. They directed the government, they directed the concerned persons, and that shows the compassion, empathy, what our Honorable Justice is having for the COVID patient. And I really welcome it. And I think that others will take a lesson. I will not say that everything is perfect in Kerala. No, there are challenges. But one thing appears to be very clear, that state of Kerala is doing its best with all good intentions. And of course, if we are having the government and the Human Rights Commission and the High Court, which are working in that direction, things will solve. And similarly, problems of the migrant laborers and others, they were very well taken by the Kerala. However, availability of the remdesivir, uh, I know that I tried to find out, but I'm not having the exact data. The crisis which was created in other states, uh, whether it was there in Kerala or not, I think the presenters who are presenting their paper, if they will try to discuss, they will tell us about it. But the important thing is, uh, in other places, for example, in Jabalpur, one hospital has been caught selling fake medicines, spurious medicines, remdesivir, and they were selling it for the 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, and people have been arrested for that. Black marketing of the medicines. I'm not sure about the Kerala, but in other states, such type of practices by the people. Sometimes I think, are they not human beings who are doing it? In the name of the human rights, whether we will not be able to have something, though government is imposing NSA or something like that, but of course it's a big challenge. Why the people are becoming devil, inhuman, when such type of situation or emergency is in front of it? Uh, in During this pandemic, there has been a biggest loss of employment in 2020-21, and it has been suffered by the salaried employed, as opposed to the popular belief that they were the safest in terms of security of employment and earning during the COVID-19 lockdown. My Human Rights Center worked in this particular area, and I am having data, and I hope that Gigi Money, because I'm here only because of my, I will call him younger brother or my friend, my colleague, because he was here with me at DNLU. He invited me, and he asked me, so thank you, Gigi Money, for providing me this wonderful opportunity. But the work which they did, and you opened this center when you were here with me. So this data I can share with you. And the most important aspect of the human right is life and dignity, and which I was discussing through the action taken by the Kerala Human Rights Commission, and every person is having a right to die decently. Dignified treatment must be given to the body of the deceased. And there were cases, complaints were made. And I will only say there are many provisions. We can go through the 297 of the IPC, 404 IPC, 499 IPC, 503 IPC, and especially the international covenants like Article 16 of the Geneva Convention, 1949, Article 3 of the 1990 Cairo Declaration on Human Rights, UN Commission on Human Rights in a resolution adopted in 2005 underlined the importance of dignified handling of human remains, including their proper management and disposal, as well as of respect for the needs of family. The UN Interagency Standing Committee Operational Guidelines on Human Rights and Natural Disaster recommend that appropriate measures should be taken to facilitate the return of remains to the next of kin. Measures should be allow for the possibility of recovery of human remains for future identification and reburial if required. International humanitarian law of the Fourth Geneva Convention provide that the state should ensure that graves are respected, properly maintained, and marked in such a way that they can always be recognized. Why I am telling about all these conventions? Because we know it's a very important human rights, but unfortunately, our system in which the officers are working, grassroots uh, police, other persons are working, uh, they are not aware. Even the medical staff, people are not aware. And that was the reason when that news came that 22 bodies were taken in an ambulance, one above other. And the explanation which was given by them that we are not having ambulance with us. Similarly, at some other places, body was taken on the cycle. I really, it disturbs me. And I hope that, because I know that Justice Domino's heart might be bleeding also for such type of things. And that's why he intervened. As far as the, because in our country also, the High Court has taken the cognizance of it. The Karnataka High Court on 27th July 2020 stated that the state government and the civic body Bengaluru are bound to come out with guidelines to ensure the dignity of the dead. You see, is this direction was required? Have we lost empathy? These are the questions related. Of course, High Court has identified that particular right. The court directed to the state government of Karnataka to ensure that the dead bodies are given to proper burial or cremation. I think this direction should have come from the government itself prior to the direction of the High Court. The Karnataka government promptly complied with the High Court's order by releasing guidelines for the management of the dead bodies during COVID-19. Those guidelines were not there before. The Calcutta High Court on September 16 last year, in the case of Vineet Rua versus the Principal Secretary, Department of Health and Family Welfare, Government of West Bengal and others, was of the firm view that the right to dignity and fair treatment under Article 21 of the Constitution is not only available to a living person, but also to his mortal remains after his demise. Disposal of a human body, whether or not the person dies of COVID-19, whether by cremation or burial, should be done with due respect and solemnity. This High Court direction indicates, you see, apathy of people who are taking care of such type of cases. I think similar case was decided by the Telangana High Court on April 27 in the case of R. Sameer Ahmed versus State of Telangana and others. High Court observed, I quote, human bodies are not being treated with the dignity they deserve. The dead bodies are piling up waiting to be cremated due to the paucity of space and non-availability of adequate facilities and manpower. The state was asked to submit the details of the number and the capacity of the cremation. Friends, frankly speaking, honestly speaking, the COVID-19 pandemic touches every aspect of business, technology, and society. And stable and effective government is at the heart of managing through this crisis. What we do now will have longer term implications for the health and safety of our families, our citizens, the economy, and even global stability. During times of crisis, governments around the world must act quickly and decisively, even in the face of limited information. For the next few months, governments will be facing issues of emergency management, continuity of operations, and citizens' engagement and care. Cognitive assistance and self-service tools can help agencies provide services to help the citizens maintain physical and mental health. Uh, for example, because I just tried to find out, I found some examples. For example, government agencies in Czechoslovakia Republic, Greece, Poland, Spain, UK, and cities across the United States quickly deployed virtual agents using IBM Watson Assistant for citizens to help answer citizens' questions about COVID-19. In addition, mobility tools and infrastructure can ease the intensifying strain on citizen services coupled with a reduced workforce capacity resulting from work from home, hurdles, and restricted citizen movement. Cognitive analytics can also be applied to help government understand what is happening and to match resources to demand. As I said in the beginning, human rights are more than legal concepts. If you will deny them, you will deny the man's humanity. With these words, I would like to conclude, and I would like to thank the organizers who provided me this wonderful opportunity to express my views. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because I know youths are working very hard. I saw groups of the youths working for finding the bed, for arranging the oxygen, for answering the questions, and counseling the patients. I know that this prestigious institution, because today you have organized this particular webinar, it's very important. Mar Georgius College of Law will be in the front for rendering such type of services. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I take it as my privilege to invite our chief guest, Honorable Mr. Justice Anthony Dominic, Chairperson, Kerala State Human Rights Commission, to address us all.
Good morning to you. I suppose I am audible enough.
Yes, sir, you're audible. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you. Respected Dr. Balraj Chauhan, Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Thomas Uti, Vice Principal, Reverend Father Koshi, Director, Dr. Deepthi, Assistant Professor and Coordinator, members of the faculty, students, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me congratulate the management of this Mark Gregorius College of Law for organizing this webinar on a subject which is very relevant for humanity today. I congratulate the management once again for their endeavor. I must also thank Dr. Chauhan for complimenting the State Human Rights Commission for the initiative it has taken. Thank you, Dr. Chauhan, once again. I am grateful and truly honored to be among the distinguished speakers who will be discussing the impact of COVID-19 on human rights. History will judge 2020 and 2021 as disastrous years for humanity. The official fatality and infection rates in India continue to be highest in the world. According to the government of India, even now, over 98% of India's population continues to be vulnerable to COVID. Scientific community has predicted that the numbers are likely to increase and more severe waves are expected. Protection of human rights ultimately depends upon the democratic fabric of our society. It has been increasingly faltering all over the world for the past several years, and the pandemic has accelerated that erosion. When this pandemic was playing havoc, the anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a landmark document that has inspired and transformed the lives of millions, was celebrated. Predicated on the principle of equality of all human beings, the UDHR became the basis of many human rights conventions, constitutions of nations, and a huge body of human rights standards. In the years since the declaration was adopted in 1948, many nations have made great progress in making human rights a human reality. Step by step, barriers that once prevented people from enjoying the full measure of liberty, the full experience of dignity, and the full benefits of humanity have fallen away. In many places, racist laws have been repealed. Legal and social practices that relegated weaker sections to second-class status have been abolished, and religious minorities are enabled to practice their faith. Many of the human rights found in the UDHR are recognized as fundamental rights guaranteed in our Constitution. Subsequently, in 1993, the Parliament enacted the Protection of Human Rights Act, defining human rights and providing machinery for the enforcement of the rights. Human rights as defined in the Act refer to the fundamental rights guaranteed in the Constitution, particularly the right to life under Article 21. Thus, while Constitution reflects human rights contained in the UDHR, the human rights defined in the Act reflects the fundamental rights guaranteed in the Constitution. The human rights, as Dr. Chauhan has already said, are the natural and inalienable rights which every one of us have acquired, merely because of our birth in this country. We are fortunate that our Constitution is considered as a living document with expanding rights. The Act is also understood in that manner, lest the very object of the legislation will be defeated. Thus, human rights are recognized in this country also expand with changing times and demands of the situation. Yet, all have not been benefited from that progress in the same way, and the real achievements in this area are far from satisfactory. For a long time, we have entertained the illusion that human rights violations are merely surface cracks in an otherwise solid edifice. We were not equal before the pandemic, and we have not been equal in the face of it. Now, an invisible coronavirus has deepened those cracks. The pandemic has affected almost every section of the society and every facet of human rights. The older people paid the highest price, not only because of the health vulnerabilities necessarily associated with age, but also because of the social settings in which many of them live. Those living independently have also suffered emotionally because of the lockdown measures that have further isolated them from their families and the rest of the community. The pandemic has also shown the structural problems affecting healthcare systems in many countries, particularly India, such as grossly inadequate public health infrastructure, personnel, and means. The right to a meaningful life is a fundamental right in this country. Yet, we have witnessed several instances where patients are refused even admission into hospitals. We have seen patients begging for medicines, ventilators, oxygen, and treatment. We know that in this crisis, several people lost their lives, which could have been saved if we had a better healthcare system in place. It is universally accepted that figures indicating the affected and dead are grossly underreported. Even those figures are heartbreaking. Recently, a local newspaper in Gujarat reported that during the 71 days period between March and May 2021, the government issued 1,23,871 death certificates, while during the corresponding period in the previous year, only 58,000 certificates were issued. The excess deaths, according to the report, were caused due to surge in COVID-19 infections. It is also reported that the official death toll during the due to COVID during the aforesaid 71 days in the previous year, in 2021, is just 4,218. The case of other states cannot be different. Misery did not stop with the death. Although a dignified burial is a facet of human rights, media the world over has critically reported the unending queues with the dead bodies in the crematoriums and cremation grounds. Even cremation grounds set up for pet animals had to be converted for cremation of the dead. We have read about the decomposed corpses floating in River Ganga, which were reportedly recovered and disposed of by the state. While the official toll of this is below 100, one news channel reported it to be 2,000 in UP alone. And the reason for such a inhuman disposal of dead bodies is stated to be that relatives could not afford the cost of cremation and the non-availability of firewood. We boasted about the indigenous vaccines. The vaccination program, which was launched with much fanfare, has not reached anywhere near the target. And at this rate, it will take months, if not years, to make any appreciable progress. Although the pandemic has affected several villages, going by the news reports, vaccination is still a distant dream in many places. The government seeks to justify the export of large quantities of vaccine to over 90 countries, contending that once an epidemic takes in the form of a pandemic, its management has to be done, keeping the entire globe as a unit. The second wave of COVID-19 has been impacting pregnant women. A sudden increase in maternal deaths and a handful of near-miss mortality events among pregnant women in Kerala in the past 3 months have sent alarm bells ringing in the healthcare sector. The pandemic has also exposed gender inequality. This is evident in the workplace, where deep-rooted social attitudes keep women in a subordinate role. The persistence of violence against women, which are the results of ingrained patterns of inequalities against women. Cases of domestic violence have increased during the lockdown imposed, despite measures adopted by governments to alleviate the suffering and counter the problem. Much remains to be achieved. One sector badly affected is the labor and services. This is not confined to any area, state, or country. Loss of employment and earnings has adversely affected the demand for consumer goods, production, and employment opportunities. This vicious circle will continue for some years to recover. The migrant labor are the worst sufferers of the pandemic. The pathetic sight of thousands of them, including their infant children, walking thousands of miles to reach their villages, is still fresh in our memories. The pandemic has shown us the inequality in access to the internet. This is particularly worrying since closure of educational institutions have compelled millions of students to rely on the internet to study and build the foundation of their future. A UN report estimates that 2/3 of school-age children worldwide have no internet at home. The case of India must be worse. This is one of the most pressing issues to be solved because it will have long-lasting negative impact if it remains unaddressed. The pandemic has also provided the rulers with an ideal pretext to exploit fears, crack down on dissent, restrict right, and to introduce disproportionate restrictions on freedom of expression. As mentioned by Dr. Chauhan, in some states in North India, even appeals in social media for oxygen invited prosecution. We have recently seen our Supreme Court passing an order curbing such unwarranted misadvantages and cautioning states against initiating criminal investigations against people in the social media for medical assistance and care. The problems caused by COVID have also highlighted the importance of combating disinformation that can cause panic and social unrest, hampering the work of journalists and media actors, and restrictions on the public's right to receive information are precious rights to be safeguarded. And pandemic is no justification to dilute it. Other measures restricting freedom of assembly have been used to undercut the ability of human rights defenders and civil society to act in defense of human rights and aid the most vulnerable. There are several other sections of the society that are severely affected. The human rights standards offer necessary flexibility to adapt to emergency situations. The states must not send the wrong signal that adherence to human rights standards may undermine the fight against the pandemic. The pandemic has shown the importance of placing the human right to health at the very center of the design of our health systems. Enhanced protection of human rights can thus be seen as an asset in rather than an obstacle to preventing and alleviating the negative effects of such a pandemic. Thus, human rights, both as a concept and as a bunch of rights, suffered a huge setback in this pandemic period. We need a renewed impetus now. The many challenges that our societies face require us to give greater prominence to human rights. There is no panacea to this crisis, but an attempt to address these problems is itself a good beginning. The founding principles and values of UDH are as relevant today as they were when they first emerged from bloodshed, tyranny, and war. Moreover, if we want society to function in line with human rights standards and principles, we must all make an extra effort. We must all work together and show that human rights are not an abstract concept, but very concrete issues, the absence of which can have serious consequences, as the pandemic has shown. In the long run, only an informed citizenry can sustain the country. As rightly said by Frederick Douglass, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. Therefore, it is essential that public are made aware of the importance and essentiality of the requirement of a sound rule of law and adherence to human rights. I am confident that this webinar will serve that noble purpose. Let this be an opportunity to dedicate ourselves to work together and make that happen. With these words, I declare this webinar formally inaugurated and thank the organizer of this webinar for giving me this great opportunity. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the Center for Human Rights, I'd like to invite Dr. Deepti Yu, Assistant Professor and Coordinator at the Center for Human Rights, Mar Gregorius College of Law, to convey the vote of thanks.
Good morning. I am honored and grateful for the opportunity to offer a vote of thanks. I express my deep gratitude on behalf of Mar Gregorius College of Law to Honorable Mr. Justice Anthony Dominic, Chairperson, Kerala State Human Rights Commission, for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us here today and share this moment with us. Thank you, sir, for delivering such an engaging and thought-provoking speech. Your presentation sets the stage for this webinar. We would also like to express our gratitude to the Kerala State Human Rights Commission for partnering with us. I would like to thank Professor Balraj Chauhan, Vice Chancellor, Dharmashastra National Law University, Jabalpur, on behalf of the institution for kindly accepting the honor of being the National Webinar's Guest of Honor. Thank you, sir, for your thought-provoking and illuminating words. I had also like to express my gratitude to Professor Dr. Thomas Kutty, PG, Vice Principal, for graciously accepting to offer the welcome address. On behalf of the institution, I had like to thank all of the dignitaries, rapporteurs, paper presenters, and participants for accepting our invitation and agreeing to participate in the webinar. As you are all aware, the organization of such events is usually the product of close collaboration among a number of people. It gives me great pleasure to convey my gratitude for the assistance and encouragement provided by such individuals, both on behalf of the organizers and on my own behalf. Firstly, I want to express my gratitude to the director, Father Dr. Koshi Isaac Unnamutal, Principal Dr. John P.C., and Vice Principal Professor Ramachandran Nair for their efforts in making this national webinar a reality. I also like to thank Dr. Gigi Mon, Associate Professor and Department Head, for conceptualizing and promoting the national webinar to other institutions and universities. I also express my deep gratitude to all faculty members of the institution for encouraging students to participate and also guiding the participants too. Professor Ria Susan George and Professor Vinu Lal have provided the organizing committee with unflinching assistance. Words are inadequate to express my gratitude. Lastly, I want to thank my dearest students for their unwavering support during the webinar organization process. If I don't mention Narayan Sharma, Arya Kannan, Shilpa Sanjeevan, Shri Kuti, and Brahma Siraj, I will be breaking my conscience. To conclude, let me once again reiterate my gratitude to all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It's now time for a 30 minutes break before we begin our thematic session. Participants, please note that the session will resume at 11 a.m. on the same link. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.